Good evening and welcome. Tonight I will be reading to you this book called Women Who Made History, Inventors, and Scientists. This is part of my Viewer's Choice series. This topic was picked by Poppy. Thank you, Poppy. Great idea. Let's get right into this book. Let's get right into it and read about all of these amazing women. I'm probably most likely going to mispronounce some names or places, and I apologize for that in advance. Let's get into it. Awesome women. The course of history is packed with stories of women overcoming odds, defying expectations, and shattering stereotypes. Yet, all too often, their contribution has been overlooked, underplayed, or just forgotten. Many cultures have believed, or still believe, that women do not need an education, cannot be trusted with leadership, are physically inferior, and are intellectually weak. Men have been privileged, and this means that they have been the world's default decision makers and history writers. Women, however, have been achieving greatness, even when everything seemed against them. The scientists and inventors in this book are by no means the definitive list of female history makers, nor are they perfect and without fault, but they are pioneers who stood out, made a difference, and proved without a doubt that they were just as capable as men. Their contributions, both to their field and as an inspiration to others, are worthy of celebration, and that is what this book aims to do. Inventors and scientists. From biochemists and physicists to volcanologists, mathematicians, and engineers, women have been shaping the world of scientific research and invention for centuries. Even though they had fewer opportunities than men, many female scientists and inventors have reached the top of their fields. Some had to leave their home countries, either to escape political persecution or to access schooling, research, money, or jobs, and many were not given recognition for their achievements. All of them had to deal with the mistaken and damaging idea that men were more gifted than women at science and technology. In this book, we meet some of the incredible women who refused to accept outdated sexist notions and were willing to tackle prejudice head-on. Their achievements include numerous scientific breakthroughs and discoveries, as well as the invention of technologies that were far ahead of their time. Working to the very best of their abilities, these women have shown in their chosen areas. They didn't always receive the same recognition as their male equals, but their monumental contributions to science and technology have helped to improve the lives of us all and to move humankind forward. Making history. Although we seem to commemorate many skilled male inventors, there are many women worthy of our praise too. It is worth remembering that most of these women fought hard to work in industries and systems that were dominated by men. They show perseverance, strength, and patience. Starting with Françoise Barré-Sinoussi. Françoise Barré-Sinoussi grew up in France. She enjoyed science at school and was curious about animals. During vacations, she would watch them with interest, looking at how they behaved and how they were different from each other. She decided to study science and had a part-time job in a research laboratory. She was soon working full-time at the Pasteur Institute and began looking at retroviruses. In 1983, Françoise was part of the team that discovered HIV, the virus that causes AIDS. She traveled to many countries in her research. Thanks to her work, treatment for AIDS sufferers has improved dramatically. Françoise was awarded the Nobel Prize for her work in 2008. Here's Maria Sibylla Merian. Maria Sibylla Merian was born in Germany to a Swiss family. Her stepfather was a well-known painter and encouraged her to start painting. While she was growing up, Frankfurt was a center for the silk trade. Maria began raising silkworms and collecting other insects. From this point on, she collected and drew specimens, studying their life cycles and behavior. Maria continued to draw and published 3 collections of engravings. One of these collections showed the exact process of the transformation of a caterpillar into a butterfly. She moved to Amsterdam and from there traveled to Suriname at a time when such trips were usually made only by men. She studied the insect life of Suriname and published the first book about the natural history of the country. Through her life, Maria made detailed paintings of the life cycles of nearly 200 insects. Her work was the first proper investigation into the process of metamorphosis or transformation, and her method of classifying butterflies and moths is still used today. Next is Mamie Phipps Clark, social psychologist. Mamie Phipps was born into a divided, unfair society. There was racial segregation across the United States, but especially in southern states such as Arkansas, where Mamie grew up. I don't know if it's Mamie or Mamie. Anyway, my apologies if I'm mispronouncing. African Americans had separate schools, hospitals, and prisons, and they had their own entrances to theaters and sports grounds. They were not even allowed to sit on certain bus seats or park benches. The education in schools for African American children was often poorer than in white schools. Despite these disadvantages, Mamie worked hard, completed school, and won a university scholarship. She began a degree in mathematics and physics, but soon switched to psychology. In her final year, she married Kenneth Bancroft Clark, who was studying to be a doctor of psychology. After graduating, Mamie began a master's degree. She researched how African American children in segregated communities saw themselves, a field of study that nobody had ever looked at before. Mamie and Kenneth were the first African Americans to graduate as doctors from Columbia University in New York City. In the 1940s, they carried out doll tests that built on Mamie's original research. The Clarks interviewed young African American children from segregated and non-segregated areas. They showed the children dolls that were identical, apart from being either white with yellow hair or black with brown hair. They asked the children if they felt that they looked more like one doll than the other. They also asked the children if they liked one of the dolls more, and if so, why. The results of the study were shocking. Most of the children, especially those from segregated areas, preferred the white doll. They thought the black one was ugly and bad, but they also believed that they looked like the black doll. Mamie and Kenneth saw that segregation had damaged the black children's self-esteem and made them think they were not as good as the white children. Something had to change. They needed to be treated as equals. In 1954, the court case Brown versus Board of Education used the Clarks' study as proof that segregation was harming black children. As a result, school segregation was banned in the United States. Mamie faced prejudice as an African American woman, but she finally found a fulfilling job when she opened the Northside Center for Child Development in 1946. It provided support for children who had emotional problems. Mamie improved the lives of countless young people from poor and minority backgrounds. Next is Rita Levi-Montalcini, neurobiologist. Although her father thought that a woman's duty was to be a wife and mother, Rita Levi-Montalcini had her own ideas. Determined to be a doctor, she graduated from the medical school in Turin, Italy in 1936. Her plans to spend 3 more years studying the human brain were blocked, not because she was a woman, but because of her Jewish faith. Italy's leader, Benito Mussolini, was an ally of Germany's Adolf Hitler. To show his support for Hitler, Mussolini introduced race laws that made Jews second-class citizens. With Jews forbidden to work as doctors or carry out academic research, Rita set up a secret lab at her parents' house. She studied chicken embryos' nerve cells with homemade instruments. She had to move house once, taking all her equipment with her. Despite the difficulties, Rita made groundbreaking discoveries that would explain how cancer spreads. In 1946, Rita took a position at the university in St. Louis, Missouri. She repeated the chicken embryo experiments with biochemist Stanley Cohen. The pair discovered the protein that controls nerve growth and were joint winners of the Nobel Prize in 1986. Rita was also awarded membership of the European Molecular Biology Organization, or EMBO, and made a senator for life in the Italian government. She worked right up to her death at age 103. Next is Nettie Stevens, geneticist. Born in Vermont, Nettie Stevens grew up in an era where it was unusual for girls to be educated. Luckily for her, she was able to attend a school that welcomed girls. Nettie had to work as a teacher and librarian to save up enough money to go to college, and was 39 by the time she left Stanford, California, with her master's degree. Nettie took a research position at Bryn Mawr, a women-only college in Pennsylvania. She studied mealworms and other insects to work out what decides an offspring's sex. Nettie showed that their chromosomes, or the lengths of DNA, come in pairs. Females have 2 X chromosomes, while males have an X and a Y. Offspring always receive 1 X chromosome from their mother, but can receive an X or a Y from the father. If it's a Y, the offspring will be male. X chromosomes had been identified in 1900, and Nettie named her discovery the Y chromosome because it follows X in the alphabet. It took time before scientists accepted the idea that chromosomes determine sex. Nettie's research career was short. Sadly, she died at age 50, but in that time she made great leaps that helped us to understand genes. Next is Ada Lovelace, mathematician. Ada King, Countess of Lovelace, was born in London, then Middlesex, UK. Her parents, the famous poet Lord Byron and mathematician Annabella Milbank Byron, separated 5 weeks after Ada's birth, so she never got to know her father. Determined to give Ada a good education, Annabella hired private tutors. Most of Ada's schooling was in science, logic, and mathematics. Annabella believed that studying would keep Ada out of trouble. She was worried that Ada might have inherited her father's wildness. Lord Byron was often involved in scandals, and Ada's mother didn't want Ada to follow in his footsteps. Ada met Charles Babbage at a party when she was 18. Charles was an inventor who became famous for his work on the earliest forms of computers. He showed Ada the prototype of a mechanical calculator called the difference engine. He also talked to her about a complex computing machine that he had just started to design. Called the analytical engine, it would be programmed using punched cards. Ada was fascinated by the machine's possibilities. Ada married at 20 and started a family, but her mathematical studies were not interrupted for long. In 1842, the Italian mathematician Luigi Menabrea asked Ada to translate an article he had written about the analytical engine, recognizing that she had the language skills and mathematical understanding to do a great job. Ada not only translated the article, but she also added her own detailed annotations and explanations. When the article was published in 1843, Ada was praised for its insightful, comprehensive notes. She clearly had a unique grasp of Charles Babbage's vision. Charles himself was in awe of her mathematical talent and ability to formulate complex calculations. Only a small section of the analytical engine was built during Charles's lifetime, but Ada's contributions are valued to this day. Her instructions to make the analytical engine solve problems are now considered the first programming language. A century later, in the 1940s, the English computer scientist Alan Turing referred to Ada's notes while developing some of the first modern computers. Ada died of cancer when she was just 36 years old, but her name lives on. Every year on the second Tuesday in October, people around the world mark Ada Lovelace Day. It celebrates the achievements of women in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, or STEM. Next is Lise Meitner, physicist. Lise Meitner grew up in Vienna, Austria, at a time when girls could not go to school after the age of 14. However, as soon as Austrian universities started accepting women, she took the entrance exam and was accepted. Lise went on to become one of the very first women in the world to hold a PhD in physics. Lise discovered nuclear fission, the process that powers the atomic bomb. To her lifelong disappointment, the Nobel Prize for its discovery was unfairly awarded solely to her fellow male scientist, Otto Hahn. However, Lise did win many other awards and even had a radioactive element, meitnerium, named after her. Next is Elizabeth Blackburn, biochemist. Born on the island of Tasmania, Australia, Elizabeth Blackburn studied biochemistry at Melbourne University and was awarded her PhD from Cambridge, UK. In the early 1980s, she discovered telomerase. The protective tips on the ends of chromosomes are called telomeres. That's the word I know, telomeres. And over time, they shorten and are unable to protect the chromosomes. Telomerase slows down this shortening. Elizabeth and her colleagues Carol Greider and Jack Szostak won a Nobel Prize for their work. In 2017, Elizabeth co-wrote a book about living longer to show that genes are only part of the story. Eating healthily, exercising, and using techniques such as mindfulness to reduce stress can stop cell decay and slow down aging. Next is May-Britt Moser, psychologist and neuroscientist. May-Britt grew up on a remote farm in Fosnavåg, Norway, then moved to Oslo to study psychology and neurobiology. During this time, she met Edvard Moser and they married in 1985. The Mosers worked together on spatial awareness, how the brain allows us to understand where we are at any given moment. They discovered the neurons or nerve cells that look after spatial awareness and some memory in the hippocampus, a small organ deep in the brain. In 2014, May-Britt and Edvard were awarded the Nobel Prize for Psychology or Medicine, along with their mentor, American-British neuroscientist John O'Keefe. Their discovery has helped us to understand more about human memory and brain diseases such as Alzheimer's. Next is Katia Krafft, volcanologist. Katia Krafft was born in Soultz-Haut-Rhin, France. I probably said that wrong. When she was 14 years old, she became fascinated by volcanoes and went on to study volcanology. At university, she met her future husband, Maurice Krafft. The two shared a fearless passion for volcanoes and became the first scientists to study, film, and photograph eruptions and lava flows up close. Katia and Maurice used their knowledge to educate communities close to volcanoes on how to stay safe. Their work, along with their predictions of volcanic eruptions, have helped to save millions of lives worldwide. Tragically, Katia and her husband were killed during the eruption of a volcano in Japan in 1991. Next is Maryam Mirzakhani, mathematician. In July 2017, most Iranian newspapers made an unthinkable decision. They broke the dress code of only showing women wearing the hijab, or a traditional veil, and featured a woman with uncovered hair. Their front pages pay tribute to a national hero, the mathematician Maryam Mirzakhani, who had died of cancer at age 40. Maryam was born in Tehran, and her childhood was overshadowed by war. In 1979, the Islamic leader Ayatollah Khomeini led the Iranian Revolution, overthrowing the Shah, or king, and founding an Islamic republic. Then came the Iran-Iraq War, which brought hardship and huge changes to how the country was run. Later, Maryam insisted she was lucky. Had she been a teenager during the war, she would have had fewer educational opportunities. Maryam attended a school for gifted and talented girls. At first, she had no interest in mathematics, and her ambition was to become a writer. Toward the end of her school years, her brother introduced her to complicated mathematical problems and their solutions. Maryam was fascinated and wanted to learn more. She obviously had a flair for mathematics, and most importantly, she really enjoyed it too. In 1994, Maryam became the first girl to represent Iran at the International Mathematical Olympiad, winning a gold for her country. She repeated this feat in 1995. She went on to study mathematics at Sharif University, Iran's top science institution. After graduating in 1999, Maryam emigrated to the United States. She was awarded a PhD at Harvard University in 2004. Maryam specialized in the intricate mathematics of curved surfaces. She developed formulas for finding the surface areas of increasingly complicated, rounded, irregular shapes. Although Maryam was working with incredibly difficult, abstract ideas, she took a refreshingly playful and visual approach. She often drew shapes and doodles on blackboards or pieces of paper, scribbling equations all around them. The process helped Maryam to think and move forward. She had an unusually gifted and creative mind for problem solving. In 2014, Maryam became the first woman to be awarded the Fields Medal. Given every 4 years, this is an exceptional prize for mathematicians and is similar in importance to the Nobel Prize. Maryam's mathematical contribution has been useful in many fields. In cosmology, her formulas have enabled physicists to explore the curved nature of the universe. They've also furthered research and design in engineering, materials, and even computer encryption, or turning information into a scrambled code. Next is Rosalind Franklin, chemist and X-ray crystallographer. Born in London, UK, Rosalind Franklin knew by the age of 15 that she wanted to be a scientist. She studied natural sciences at Newnham, one of only 2 Cambridge University colleges that admitted women at that time. In 1945, Rosalind left Cambridge with a PhD in physical chemistry. Rosalind went to work at King's College London in 1951, after some time in Paris learning X-ray crystallography, taking X-ray images of the atoms or molecules that make up crystals. Rosalind used the technique to photograph DNA, the molecule that stores our genes or instructions for life. Photo 51, Rosalind's detailed X-ray image of DNA, helped the molecular biologist Francis Crick, James Watson, and Maurice Wilkins identify the structure of DNA as a twisted ladder shape, or double helix. They used Photo 51 without Rosalind's permission and without crediting her. In 1962, the three men won a Nobel Prize in Chemistry. Knowing the structure of DNA has enabled us to develop new medicines, understand illnesses better, and even grow stronger crops. Today we know how important Rosalind's work was. Prizes, grants, laboratories, computer software, and even an asteroid have been named after her. Next is Jane Goodall, primatologist, ethologist, and anthropologist. Born Valerie Jane Morris Goodall in London, UK, Jane loved animals from an early age. Her dream was to travel to Africa to study apes. In 1957, Jane went to work as a secretary in Kenya. She met Louis Leakey, the archaeologist and paleontologist who had discovered early hominids, or human ancestors. Louis set up a long-term project for Jane to study chimpanzees in their habitat in Tanzania. Armed with binoculars and a notepad, Jane set to work. At first, the chimpanzees didn't trust her, but Jane continued to visit the same spot at the same time day after day. Eventually, her patience paid off. Jane established a unique and close relationship with the chimpanzees and was able to make groundbreaking discoveries. She reported that they had complex social lives, showed emotions such as empathy, and even used tools. Until then, scientists thought that only humans used tools. In the 1980s, when the chimpanzees' habitat became endangered, Jane started campaigning to protect the apes. She has founded conservation organizations and written books that have changed the way we see ourselves as humans, as well as how we view animals. Since 2002, Jane has also served as a United Nations Messenger of Peace. She also passed away very recently. Rest in peace to Jane Goodall. Next is Mary Anning, paleontologist. To this day, the beaches and cliffs around Lyme Regis in southwestern England, UK, are known for their rich fossil finds. They are part of the Jurassic Coast, a protected area that has perfectly preserved records of prehistoric times. This was the birthplace of Mary Anning, who would go on to become one of the world's most important paleontologists. Mary was the oldest of 10 children, though only she and her brother Joseph survived to adulthood. Their father, Richard Anning, a cabinet maker, occasionally made extra money selling fossils to tourists. In 1810, Richard died, leaving his wife and children with debts to pay and no income. They began to collect fossils to support themselves. Mary had a particular knack for finding, extracting, and preparing them. Her mother, also called Mary, ran the business side of things. Times were hard. The Annings barely managed to get by until in 1820, a professional fossil collector called Thomas Birch decided to help. He sold off his own fossil specimens and gave the proceeds of the sale to the family. Thomas felt the Annings deserved a better life because of their contributions to science. Most of Mary's finds and sales were ammonites and belemnites, prehistoric mollusks that were common in the area. In 1811, however, the 12-year-old Mary presented London's scientific community with its first ichthyosaurus. She went on to find more ichthyosaurs, the first complete plesiosaur, or long-necked sea reptile, and Britain's first pterosaur, or flying reptile. Mary was single-minded when she was fossil hunting and often put herself in danger. In 1833, she nearly died in a landslide that killed her dog, Trey. Even though many of Mary's specimens ended up in museums, it took a while for the mostly male scientists to give Mary any credit. They couldn't believe that a self-taught woman had any insights worth paying attention to. Eventually, Mary's expertise could not be ignored. In 1838, the British Association for the Advancement of Science, along with the Geological Society of London, awarded Mary a yearly income. She was also made an unofficial member of the All-Male Geological Society. Mary changed the face of geology, established the field of paleontology, and raised important questions about Earth's history. At the time, the Bible's story of creation in 7 days was widely accepted. Mary's work, along with research by Charles Darwin and others, contributed to a new scientific evidence-based theory, evolution. Next is Marie Curie, chemist and physicist. Marie Curie, born Maria Skłodowska, grew up in Warsaw, Poland. Her parents were both teachers, and she was their 5th and youngest child. The family did not have much money and were even poorer after Marie's mother died in 1878. Polish universities did not accept women. Marie worked as a governess to support her sister, Bronislava, who was studying medicine in Paris, France, and to save up for her own fees for a French university. Marie arrived in Paris in 1891. She earned a degree in physics at the Sorbonne, then a second degree in mathematics. She met fellow scientist Pierre Curie, and the two married in 1895. Marie began to study uranium rays for her PhD. Marie and Pierre invented a device called the gold leaf electroscope, which could measure the radioactivity of substances placed between the electrodes. By 1898, they had found 2 new radioactive elements, polonium, named after Marie's birth country, and radium. Marie came up with the term radioactive. In the next few years, she published many research papers, some with Pierre. She was the first woman in Europe to gain a doctorate in science. In 1903, Marie and Pierre won the Nobel Prize in Physics for their work on radioactivity. They shared it with physicist Henri Becquerel, who had first seen radioactivity. The following year, the Curies presented their findings on curing cancer with radiation therapy. In 1906, Pierre was tragically run over and killed by a horse-drawn cart. The Sorbonne offered his job to the heartbroken Marie. She accepted and became the university's first female professor. Marie had been the first woman to win a Nobel Prize. In 1911, she became the first person to be awarded 2, this time in chemistry. She had developed a method for measuring radioactivity. That same year, she was made director of the Sorbonne's new radioactivity laboratory, which had been named after her. She also ran the Institute for Radioactivity in Warsaw. In World War I, Marie put X-ray machines in ambulances and field hospitals. X-ray imaging at the front line sped up medical diagnosis and saved many soldiers' lives. In 1934, Marie died of a rare disease caused by all the radiation she had been exposed to over the years. She had not realized the danger. Even today, Marie's notebooks are so radioactive that people have to wear protective clothing to handle them. Next is Hedy Lamarr, inventor and actor. Hedy Lamarr was born Hedy Keisler in Vienna, Austria. When she was 19, she married an arms dealer who had ties to German Nazis and Italian fascists. Hedy, however, was Jewish. When it became clear that World War II was unavoidable, she divorced her husband and left Europe. In 1938, Hedy boarded a ship to the United States, bound for Hollywood and a career as an actor. She already had a signed contract with MGM Studios after meeting the film producer Louis B. Mayer in Paris the previous year. Hedy became famous and starred in big-budget films. She went on to be one of Hollywood's first female producers, creating some groundbreaking work. Beyond the Hollywood success, Hedy had an unusual hobby. She loved inventing things. She developed her most important invention during the war when she was just 27 years old. Working with American composer George Antheil, Hedy devised a secure communications system for warships to control their torpedoes. She used radio signals that kept switching frequency so they could not be tracked or jammed. Hedy and George's wireless system was a forerunner of GPS, Wi-Fi, and Bluetooth. In 1995, aged 80, Hedy's work was recognized with the Bowlby-Nass Spirit of Achievement Award, the Oscars of Invention. Next is Gerty Cori, biochemist. Born in Prague, now part of the Czech Republic, Gerty Cori, born Gerty Radnitz, decided at 16 that she wanted to become a doctor. She worked hard to get into the university and studied medicine from 1914 to 1920. She met her husband, Carl Cori, at university. They married in 1920. The Coris moved to Vienna, Austria after Carl got a job at the university. As a woman, Gerty was not allowed an academic job. She had to take an assistant position at a hospital. After 2 years, the couple decided to emigrate to the United States. Gerty and her husband started working as researchers in Buffalo, New York. Gerty was employed a few ranks below Carl, even though she had the same amount of experience. The couple started investigating what happens to sugar after it has been eaten. They discovered how the body stores energy and releases it. This process is called the Cori cycle. In 1947, Carl and Gerty were awarded the Nobel Prize for Physiology or Medicine for their work on the body's sugar storage and release. One result of their research was the development of new treatments for diabetes, a condition that affects blood sugar levels. Next is Sylvia Earle, marine biologist. In 2016, President Barack Obama of the United States made an important announcement. He was expanding the protected area of ocean around the Hawaiian Islands to make it the largest section of that type on Earth. This landmark decision was thanks to the work of Sylvia Earle, born Sylvia Reed, one of the world's most influential marine scientists. Sylvia moved to the Gulf of Mexico with her family when she was 12. It was here, witnessing ocean wildlife close up, that she discovered her love for the marine environment. She started diving in 1953 and later completed 2 degrees in botany, carrying out extensive research into algae. Sylvia's algae studies took 10 years and earned her a PhD, as well as much praise from fellow scientists. In 1970, Sylvia headed a mission as part of Project Tektite, in which teams of 4 scientists and an engineer lived in an underwater laboratory for up to 20 days. Sylvia's all-female team carried out important research and also captured the American public's imagination. The women were praised for their dedication and bravery. Sylvia used her newfound fame to speak out about pollution in the oceans. She had seen firsthand the damage caused by plastic waste, chemicals, and overfishing. she became a tireless campaigner for the protection of what she called Earth's blue heart. Sylvia also pushed the boundaries of deep-sea diving. In September 1979, she descended 1,250 feet, or 381 meters, to the seabed, a world record for an untethered or unattached dive. She walked for 2 hours in her heavy high-tech suit, exploring depths that no diver had ever seen before. In 1982, Sylvia co-founded a submersible company. It designed Deep Rover, a bubble-shaped, one-person research submarine that gave an all-around view and could descend to 3,300 feet, or 1,000 meters. Sylvia had served on national marine boards, led more than 50 expeditions, published over 100 scientific papers, and written books about protecting the world's oceans. In 1998, she became the National Geographic Society's first female explorer-in-residence, a position she still holds today. In 2009, Sylvia founded Mission Blue, which has the aim of creating hope spots, areas of protected ocean that are a refuge for marine life. In Hawaii, that mission has been accomplished. Next is Valentina Tereshkova, cosmonaut, which is a Soviet astronaut. Valentina Vladimirovna Tereshkova was born in a village 165 miles, or 265 kilometers, northeast of Moscow, Russia, then part of the Soviet Union. Her father, who had been a tractor driver, was killed when she was very young. Times were tough for Valentina, her mother, and 2 siblings. Valentina left school at 16 to work in the same factory as her mother. However, she also continued to study by taking distance learning courses. Valentina's passion was skydiving. Couldn't be me. She joined her local flying club and made her first parachute jump at the age of 22. She trained every weekend. She performed jumps by day and by night over grasslands, mountains, and rivers. In 1961, Valentina applied to join the Soviet space program, which had plans to put the first woman in space. There were more than 400 applicants, but Valentina was one of the 5 who were chosen thanks to her skydiving skills. The other 4 were all test pilots. The young women had months of training, followed by exams to see which of them would go into space. In 1963, 26-year-old Valentina was chosen for the mission. Her spacecraft, Vostok 6, launched in June. Valentina stayed in space for 3 days and orbited Earth 48 times. During the flight, she took photographs of our planet that later helped scientists to understand features of its atmosphere. She also communicated via radio with fellow cosmonaut Valery Bukovsky. He was flying solo too on Vostok 5, which had been launched 2 days before Valentina's spacecraft. Valentina returned to Earth a national hero, an international icon for women's equality, and a campaigner for peace. She has often spoken about how humbling and overwhelming it was to see Earth from space, a planet at once so beautiful and so fragile. Valentina was asked to lead an all-female crew on Voskhod 2 in 1965, but the mission was called off for technical reasons. 4 years later, the female cosmonaut unit was broken up. To her disappointment, Valentina never went into space again. Instead, she has held many high-level jobs in government. She travels the world giving talks, opening exhibitions, and calling for women to be given the same opportunities as men. Valentina has received the UN Peace Medal and many other awards, been made a hero of the Soviet Union, and had a moon crater and minor planet named after her. If there is ever a Mars mission, Valentina wants to be part of it. I'm ready, she has promised. Next is Ruchi Sanghvi, engineer. Born in Pune, India, Ruchi Sanghvi was told by her father early in life that business was a man's world. Determined to prove him wrong, Ruchi went to study in the United States. Even though she had never even touched a computer, she studied electrical computer engineering. She was one of 5 female students in the program out of a total of 150. In 2005, Ruchi joined Facebook as its first female software engineer. She introduced some of the most successful and innovative features, such as the newsfeed. Ruchi went on to found her own company, become an investor, and co-found the campaign group Forward.us. The group aims to improve immigration procedures, promote better education, and champion advances in technology. Next is Wang Zhenyi, scientist, astronomer, and poet. Unlike most girls in 18th century China, Wang Zhenyi was lucky enough to receive an education. She grew up in eastern China with her father, grandfather, and grandmother, who were all scholars. They introduced Wang to mathematics, medicine, geography, and astronomy. Later, she also learned archery, writing, and martial arts. Wang wrote more than a dozen books in her short lifetime. She studied the moon, sun, and their eclipses, rewrote mathematics texts to make them easier to understand, and also wrote her own poetry. For centuries, her work was not widely appreciated, but in 2004, a crater on Venus was named after her. Next is Mária Telkes, scientist and inventor. Born and educated in Budapest, Hungary, Mária Telkes moved to the United States in 1924 and took a job as a biochemist. She helped to invent a device that could record brainwaves. From the late 1930s, Mária focused on solar energy and how to harness it. She developed one of her most important inventions during World War II, a solar-powered contraption that could turn seawater into drinking water. After the war, Mária worked with architect Eleanor Raymond to create the first house that was heated by solar energy. Throughout her career, Mária continued to develop pioneering solar technologies, including stoves and heaters. In 1952, she received the first Society of Women Engineers Achievement Award. Next is Ada Yonath, biochemist and crystallographer. Ada Yonath was born in Jerusalem, Israel, the daughter of Polish immigrants. The family was poor, and Ada's father died when she was 11, so she had to help out a lot at home. Even so, she graduated from school and attended university, becoming a biochemist. In the 1970s, Ada began to study ribosomes, small but important proteins inside animal cells. She was told that it was impossible to see them in any detail, so she came up with a new technique. She found that she could take X-ray images of the atoms inside ribosomes if she chilled them to incredibly low temperatures. In 2000, Ada and her team were able to announce their success. Ada's work has been incredibly important for the development of new antibiotics. In 2009, Ada and 2 of her fellow scientists were awarded the Nobel Prize in Chemistry. Next is Grace Hopper, computer scientist and naval officer. She was known as Amazing Grace, the first lady of software, and the mother of computing. Without Grace Hopper's decades of work, computers would still need highly trained professionals to program them, and groundbreaking scientific leaps such as spaceflight might never have happened. Grace was born in New York City. Her father, who owned an insurance company, wanted his daughter to have the same opportunities as his 2 sons. Grace was privately educated and went on to complete 2 degrees in mathematics and physics and a PhD in mathematics. When the United States joined World War II in 1941, Grace wanted to do her part for the war effort. Her grandfather had been a rear admiral, but she couldn't join the Navy because of her age. She was accepted into the U.S. Naval Reserve instead. In 1943, Grace was sent to Harvard University, Massachusetts, to take part in a top-secret naval project. The team at Harvard was working on the Mark I, one of the earliest computers. It was designed to perform the long calculations that warships use to fire their weapons accurately. Grace was one of the Mark I's 3 programmers and wrote its 561-page instruction manual. She even coined the computing term bug after a moth got stuck in the machine and caused havoc. In 1949, Grace went to work on UNIVAC 1, the first commercial electronic computer. She also developed the first compiler, the component that translated the numbers and symbols fed into a computer into the zeros and ones that told the machine what to do. In 1955, Grace wrote Flowmatic, the first computer language that used English words and phrases instead of complex mathematical symbols. It was the basis for COBOL, a commonly accepted language that could program computers made by different manufacturers. Grace advised the committee that decided on COBOL and promoted it tirelessly. It was the world's most widely used computer language by 1970. Grace was still working in her 60s and 70s. She standardized the many computer languages being used in the Navy and was one of the first women to reach the rank of Rear Admiral. She finally retired in 1986, just a few months before her 80th birthday. My kitten's asleep right over there. You just heard her in her sleep, if you did. In 1991, U.S. President George Bush Sr. awarded Grace the National Medal of Technology and Innovation. It was just one of many awards and prizes given to this groundbreaking computer scientist. I think Chien-Shiung Wu is the last one in this book. Yep. So finally, we have Chien-Shiung Wu, experimental physicist. Chien-Shiung Wu was fortunate enough to attend one of the first schools in China that allowed girls. Her parents had founded the school and were teachers there. When Chien-Shiung was 10 years old, she went to a boarding school 50 miles or 80 kilometers away. She loved physics and mathematics and went on to study both subjects at university. She graduated from the National Central University in Nanjing in 1934 with the highest marks in her class. Chien-Shiung decided to complete her PhD in the United States. She arrived in San Francisco in 1936 and was offered a place at Berkeley, California, which had a world-famous physics department. Chien-Shiung's supervisor had invented a particle accelerator, and she used it to split uranium and xenon atoms and produce radioactive isotopes. An isotope is a version of an element that has the usual number of proton particles, but a different number of neutrons. Chien-Shiung met fellow physicist Luke Yuan at Berkeley, and they married in 1942. In 1944, Chien-Shiung went to work on the Manhattan Project, which was building the first atomic bomb. She was part of the team turning uranium metal into enriched uranium, radioactive isotopes that could fuel a nuclear reaction. She also helped to fix a problem with one of the project's nuclear reactors. In 1945, Chien-Shiung became a professor at Columbia University, New York City. She became an expert on beta decay, a particular kind of radioactivity during which beta rays are released. Chien-Shiung's biggest achievement was disproving the law of conservation of parity, a theory that scientists had believed to be true for decades. 2 male colleagues, Sungdao Lee and Chen-Ning Yang, predicted that this law did not always apply. In late 1956, Chien-Shiung led a team of scientists to set up her complex and famous Wu experiment that proved her colleagues were right. In 1957, Li and Yang were awarded the Nobel Prize for their contribution to particle physics. Although Chien-Shiung was not a Nobel Prize winner, she received an impressive number of scientific prizes and other distinctions during her lifetime. In 1978, she was the first winner of the Wolf Prize in Physics. Chien-Shiung retired in 1981, but she continued to travel and give talks on the importance of women in science. And that is it for tonight. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this video to be relaxing and educational, and I hope that you have a good night. Good night.